Good morning, good afternoon. Today our lecture about fundamentals of evolutionary teaching. It is a very important lecture about system of biology. And you can see a plan of lecture. It is fundamentals of evolutionary teaching, synthetic theory of evolution, features of the action of evolutionary factors in human populations, evolution factors, and micro and macro evolution. And we begin from definition. Evolution is development, a process of gradual, continuous, quantitative change of someone or something, preparing qualitative changes. Biological evolution is an irreversible, constant, historical process of changes in living organisms associated with their adaptation and development in changed environmental conditions. The natural process of development of living nature accompanied by a change in the genetic composition of populations, the formation of adaptation, speciation and extinction of species, the transformation of ecosystems and biosphere as a whole. We know about numerous species of animals and plants live in our Earth. Each species is well adapted to the conditions of existence. A variety of life form their adaptability to environmental conditions, appropriateness in the structure of and functions of organism. Charles Darwin, it is a famous researcher man, development of science-based theory of evolution. This doctrine is the largest achievement of natural science in the last century. In this regard, the entire history of evolutionary ideas is divided into two periods: pre-Darwinian period and post. And at first, we will speak about the first period, pre-Darwinian. This period was many years ago, and in this part we need to know about Empedocles, Democritus, Lucretius Carus. This is scientists which give to us term as a meta. Next, Aristotle. A third gradual development. All nature was considered by him in the form of successive transition from matter to form. Combined flora and fauna into a single system, where man represents the highest form of living beings. The main provisions of the ancient theory. The first, the idea of the unity and development of nature. Second, ladder of living beings. Third, struggle for existence with the survival of more adapted organisms. And here we need to know three period terms. It is stages of oldest evolutionary doctrine. Creationism, a teaching during the Middle Ages. Transformism, teaching in the Renaissance. And evolutionism. What means creationism? The essence of the worldview is the idealistic trend in natural science. The emergence of the world, living and inanimate nature, is the result of an act of divine creation. Everything that exists is immutable. Creationism, it is reflected the socio-political situation when education and science, the main ideas about nature, the world and man in the Middle Ages, were determined by the point of view of this church. You need to remember basic principles of creationism. Everything was created by the Creator, eternal, unchanging, and permanent. Movement is possible only in the form of quantitative rearrangements. The relationship of object and phenomena is absent. More famous in this period scientist Will Roger Bacon. It is professor of Oxford University, promoted an experimental approach to the study of the natural phenomenon. Next, transformism. This is doctrine of the variability of species and the natural transformation of living nature. Main characteristics: materialistic understanding of the world formation of the scientific taxonomy, a set of rules for the classification and nomenclature of living things. Who was famous in this period? This is Georges Louis de Buffon, he had idea of variability and movement. Life arose as a physical property of matter, general and private natural history, and the approach of nature. Next famous scientific, Carl Linnaeus. It is creationist, the basis of building a system of the organic world, introduction of a binary nomenclature, the principle of hierarchy, of subordination system of nature. Next scientific, Caspar Friedrich Wolff, and he had theory of epigenesis, founder of embryology, and Peter Simon Pallas. He had theory about family tree of life or phylogenetics, relationships of various groups of organisms. And so we need to say about Lamarck, also very famous scientific, the combination of elements of evolutionist views in the first theory of evolution. This is words which was said Lamarck. It provides the idea of progressive development of the organic world from simple to complex, philosophy and zoology. Evolutionary has laws, and first laws of variability. More frequent use of organs by animals leads to their increases, and non-use to a decreases. The law of heredity. Everything that is acquired by the organism in the course of its existence is inherited by the offspring. So we need to make resume about basis postulates of pre-Darwinian theory of evolution. Systematization of scientific knowledge and view of nature. The emergence of transformism with the idea of mutability of organisms. Creation of the first theory of evolution. The progress of science which created the preconditions for the emergence of the evolutionary teaching of Charles Darwin. And next, who was research of this postulate, thinking, combine, and give new knowledge was Charles Darwin. It is English scientific, and he the founder of the scientifically based theory of evolution. It is very famous evolution and very famous book which called The Origin of Species by Natural Selection of the Conservative of Favored Breeds in the Struggle for Life. And from this famous scientific next period we will call Darwinism or post-Darwinian period, theory of evolution. In basis of Darwin evolution, it is adaptive process which constantly changing environmental condition carried out by natural selection, And in picture you can to see how we can to think about this adaptation. From monkey use work, catch animals, building house, man always development. At first he learned to go and use his only legs. Then he was very straight and make new styles for work, for building, for catch. And this picture has very humor. We can to see that next generation, same us, same we, same our today life, again make round back, sit on chair, use computer, and can to change all habits of man. But if we will say very seriously, so we need to understand what means Darwin theory. The material for evolution is heredity and variability, or we can to transmit from our parents to new generation of our genetic materials. Only these genetic materials not consist. It is all times change, and this is change or variability can happens because all nature around us all time change, and we need always adaptation for new conditions. For example, if we speak about process of migration, we can to use again adaptation, because when people transfer or travel from south part of our planet for more north, for more freeze, for more cold, he need to adaptation. And this is position can use for opposite situation, when people can travel from north part of planet of country to south. But if we speak about one only generation, this is adaptation can use all potential on possibility in this organism, and it may be transmit on new generation, maybe not. But if we speak global process about many generation fight with disease, fight with not food, and other, we will speak about variability process in DNA, new formation in DNA, and happens evolution. Which method can use for speaking about evolutionary process? How it can possible to understand what was, which was animal, which was person, people, and what happens in next generation. For this we know and can to use next methods of studying: paleontological, comparative anatomical, embryological, biogeographic, genetic date, biochemistry date, molecular biology date. And in right part of our slide you can see three ways of embryonic development of turtle, chicken, and rabbit. And you can to see every lines has many common, and group which come to teachers in biological museum can to remember. We can to see embryonic of person, of cat, of dolphin, and some stage has many common, and this is leads and bases in evolutionary theory. What main postulate of evolutionary teaching of Charles Darwin? First, the factors leading to the formation of new species in nature are hereditary variability and natural selection. And in this picture you can see one of type of this is natural selection. How it happens? I previously speak about disease, about not food. In this picture we can to see fight between leopard and antelope which run, and more strong, more fast animals can run very fast and stay live, but weak and other problem with run short legs or other type leads to animal eat and they will die. Same will with this is leopard or gepard. If it will very fast and catch animal, it will have food and can to give her animals child animals, and it will next generation. If cannot catch, so he will die without food and generation of this species not used for living and will negative selection. The struggle for existence is a complex and diverse relationship of organisms with each other and with the conditions of the external environment. The inevitable of the struggle for existence stems from the contradiction between the ability of organism to reproduce identically and the limited life resource. In this picture you can see type of struggle for existence. It is intra-specific struggle, fight against unfavorable and conditions in interspecific struggle. The consequence of the struggle for existence is natural selection, the survival of the fittest individuals. Natural selection preserves individuals with hereditary change that are useful in the given environmental conditions and eliminates individuals that do not have this change. I speak about this previously. Next, forms of natural selection: moving, stabilizing and disruptive. And you can see this process in diagrams in downside of our slides, and you can comparative how founded two types of insect, red and yellow. And what means moving? Leads to the formation of individuals with new means values. What means stabilizing? Leads to stable population homogeneity. And disruptive two or more phenotypes are formed adapted to different environmental conditions. Next slide in Russia, but I will understand, for your understanding, describe this phenomenon in English. This slide use two types of butterfly, black and white and black. And this is type we will describe as a moving, the first, moving. And this is example speak about next process. One area where growing many trees, and all these trees have white. So when in this area on this tree was living only white butterfly, this was on view, on look for birds, and they cannot catch this is white butterfly. But in this area was many factories, and these factories make swollen and make all trees black. So in these trees white butterflies was very excellent views, and birds catch and kill and eat all this type of butterfly. But butterflies with other genetic variants and other color was very unview again on these black trees. So butterfly same white and black, it was variation of one type, but moving and changing condition leads to white butterfly was killed, but black butterfly was many generation, give many generation and distribution of this area. In next slide you can see my story about black and about white butterfly, and try to see in left and right pictures and find both type of butterfly. In black trees white and black butterfly, and white trees white and black butterflies. And answer for your own question, what is more difficult or more easy? Next, natural selection causes divergence of characters within a species and can lead to speciation. Divergence independent formation of different traits in the related organism. Types of divergence. Dichotomy, a sharp of divergence of signs in opposite directions. Adaptive radiation, various slight deviation from the original forms. The ability of organisms to survive in the struggle for existence is not necessarily associated with a higher organization. Therefore, along with highly organized forms of life, There are also law organizations owns. And you can see in this picture many different animals, sea animals and sea and swollen, and only animals which live in jungles. And blue line show how they was joined in evolution, who was um, in more industry, who more modern of species. The better an organism is adapted to its environment, the more resilient it is. But it is impossible to achieve absolute adaptation. This process is limitless. Therefore, biological evolution will never stop. And if you remember picture when I showed before, when man from monkey before computer, and I said about evolution process all times happens, all times. We all times need to understand what happens around us. For example, today April, but if we can to see our window out, we can to see snow, and it is change of weather, because in this time in this area always many flowers, many warm weather. So climate change, it lets change to all adaptation process in every human, in every animals, in every insect, because insect it is food for animals, for birds. If they in cold will die, so will absent food for birds. So birds and other animals will die too, and it will change and appearance one type of animals, disappearance another. Next, artificial selection, improvement of existing and creation of new breeds of animal and varieties of plants with useful economic properties of hereditary characteristics. Forms unconfusions by phenotype spontaneously accident culling, slow implementation. Consequence by phenotype and genotype purposeful process, strict culling is mandatory, is implemented quickly enough. But in this period happens that genetic was not in level as a modern level, and many questions about explanation what happens in this evolution and how it possible was without answer. Answer was, a question was, answer not was. And this is period modern scientific has opinion about theory of evolution, Darwin theory not work. This is theory cannot explain all position which happens with animal, with flora, with fauna, with people, and so it is not work. And this is period we called as a crisis of Darwinism. It was at the beginning of the 20th century a new science developed, which did not exist at the time of Charles Darwin. But in real, Charles Darwin was and have many right rules. Only after next year, when will development as a method of researching, of studying, and as a knowledge, new generation of scientific can explain all this position and give all answer for question which was in theory of Darwin. What we need to understand and remember from this part. With the accumulation of knowledge in the field of mutagenesis, it turned out that the overwhelming majority of coarse and pronounced spontaneous mutations have a damaging effect, reduce the vitality. Long-term preservation of macro mutations is practically impossible. Small change, micro mutations, have been steadily passed down through generations. In this moment, I need to ask you which question you have, how you understanding all what I say. Write me in comments about your question. Okay, if not question, I will continue. So, next theory, which combined all scientific view and all knowledge about previously and in future, we will call it as a synthetic theory of evolution. Synthetic means combine. The decisive step toward the convergence of Darwinism and genetics was made by the Russian scientific Chetverikov. Chetverikov is the creator of population genetics. He proved that natural populations are extremely saturated with a variety of small recessive mutations. Under appropriate environment conditions, they can be included in the field of selection. At the same time, selection work both with newly arising in scientific changes and with their huge fund accumulated in populations. New theory of evolution, it is synthetic theory. The main provision of the synthetic theory of evolution. A species, the central unit of evolution, consists of many morphologically, biochemically, ecologically, and genetically distinct, but reproductively not isolated units, populations, and subspecies. Allele change is possible only within a species. The species is a genetically integral and closed system. The material for evolution is change, is heredity, mutations. So, sexual reproduction, mutations are propagated within a population. And again, we can to see picture. We saw this previously, but now we can to understand new information in this picture. The mutation process, waves of numbers, gene drift, isolation, the factors that provide the material for selection are random and undirected. The only directing factor in evolution is natural selection. The smallest evolutionary unit is a population, not an individual or a person. Evolution is divergent in nature. It means one taxon can become the ancestor of several daughter taxa. The next, the main provisions of the synthetic theory of evolution. Evolution is gradual, something sudden and long-term. Speciated is a gradual change in the gene pool of a population, which ends in reproductive isolation. Macroevolution, evolution at a level above the species proceeds only through microevolution. Evolution is not direct towards any goal in character. Evolution is undirected but predictable. But assessing the possible influence of the environment, it is possible to predict the general direction of evolution. The synthetic theory of evolution is a continuation and development of Darwinism. The enriched evolutionary teaching of substanding the concept of a population as a unit of the evolutionary process. In this moment, we will make break time for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, we will continue our lecture. Okay, and we will continue with our lecture. And next we will say about biological species, its structure and role in evolution. Since populations represent the elementary constituent parts of species, let us consider how a biological species is organized. A species is a widespread biological structure in the nature that combines the reproductive community, ecological union, and genetic system. In the maximum approximation, a species is called a set of related individuals with common morphological characteristics that inhabit a certain area and are able to interbreed freely. When identifying and differentiation species, the criteria of the species are used: genetic, morphological, physiological, biochemical, geographical, and ecological. The main criterion for a species is its genetic unity. Each species has a strictly defined set of chromosomes, species criterion, which determines its uniqueness and integrity. The species forms the smallest genetically closed system, the gene pool of which is protected in wildlife. Morphological criteria. The variety of species in nature is extremely large. Certain species have their own morphological parameter. In some cases, the differences between species are sharply expressed. In others, on the contrary, they are smoothed out. The vulnerability of the morphological criterion is associated with the presence of sibling species, which are difficult to separate according to anatomical data. And in this slide you can see a picture with birds and flowers. At first we can see in birds, and we can see many common in these two different, at first look, birds, but it is type 1 species different, and they reality have many common. Same we can see about different species from one type of flowers. They have many differences, but have many outside and inside morphological structure in this type. The next, physiological and biochemical criteria. Each species represents a separate biological system, which has its own principle of function. The principle is based on certain physiological and biochemical parameters. In addition, the biosynthesis of some organic compounds can be carried out in similar ways in individual species and conversely differ sharply in closely related species. Next, geographic criterion. The species occupy certain areas. The size of area, its shape, position in the biosphere are important species indicators. They dictate the boundaries of the conditions suitable for the life of the species. At the same, there are frequent cases of almost complete coincidence of ranges in different species. Environmental criterion. Species that characterized by a specific set of adaptation, ensuring the placement of representative of each species in strictly defined ecological niche. An ecological niche is the sum of all environmental factors affecting a given species. It meets his natural fitness in the best way, even among sublinked species. Ecological niches do not coincide. Show me who present now in this part of lecture. Who present? Who watch and listen this part of lecture? Need not only tell about environmental criterion. Need also give example and write this example in chat. Okay, I will wait your answer for this question and will continue this lecture. Next, structure of the view. The species consist of subordinate groups. The population is the basis of species. The overpopulation groups in animals are races and subspecies. Intrapopulation groups in animals are dams and in plants biotypes. And in this picture you can see some little ecological populations. It is more smallest round. They combine in geographical populations, and all this form areal of species more big. In inner can meet many subspecies. Thus, the species is a multi-level system, the center of which in the population. Populations a set of individuals of the same species, long-term inhabiting a limited area, relatively isolated within the species, capable of freely interbreeding and giving fertile offspring. Populations are characterized by a morphological, ecological, and genetic parameters. And in chat you need to write me what means dams, what means biotypes, and what means populations. And I will say about next. Morphological characteristic of populations. Populations of one species have a common morphological structure. At the same time, they differ from each other in some quality indicators. The features are easy to take into account and subject to statistical processing. Consequently, each population of one species differs from the neighboring one in statistical indicators of characters. Ecological characteristic of population. This includes such indicators as the number of individuals in populations, the size of the range, age composition, sex ratio, and population dynamics. Main genetic characteristic of population. Any population has a complex genetic system. It is characterized on the one hand by genetic heterogeneity and on the other by genetic unity. Population heterogeneity in natural conditions. This is their main feature. Due to the fact that spontaneous mutations constantly occur in all living organisms, any group of individuals over a number of generations will inevitably by heterogenesis in genetic compositions. Only newly emergent clean lines are homogeneous. genetic unity of the populations. Despite the heterogeneity of its constituent individuals, any population is a dynamic equilibrium and is characterized by its own gene pool. The gene pool of a population is composed of a set of individual genotypes of all individuals included in a given population. In the population gene pool, there is a constant exchange of genes between members. And in this picture, you need to see and understand. In horizontal line, we can to see time. It is change which happens during time. In vertical line, we can to see how many individuals was in this population. And in your homework, you need to describe what happens, which rules play in this condition, and how it called. The law of maintaining genetic equilibrium in a population was established independently in 1908 by the physician Weinberg in Germany and the mathematician Hardy in England. It reads, if perturbing factors do not act on an infinitely large population in which free crossing occurs, then the frequencies of genes of this population do not change. Dominant genes do not displace recessive gene. P plus Q means 1. During fertilization, due to random combinations, the following free combinations of genes are possible: big A, big A small a, and small a small a. All this we note as PP or P in square, PQ and Q in square, and are determined by the binomial Newton formula. P plus Q in common in square means P square 2 times PQ and Q in square, and all this will means 1. So it is balance of different genotypes in all populations. Different type of genotypes means that in some they give 1, and if it will be new variant or other situation, it will be new process, for example migrations or mutations. Hardy-Weinberg's law is valid for an ideal populations. For ideal populations, we will speak if be infinitely enlarged in order to ensure free crossing, be isolated and deprived of the influx of genes from other populations, be characterized by the absence of described factors or mutations. There are no such populations in the wild. Nevertheless, Hardy-Weinberg's law theoretically emphasizes an important qualitative feature of a population, the desire for stability in steady state. And I give again for you question. When or where we can to meet ideal population which will work in Hardy-Weinberg's law. It is fourth question, and if you not will give answer me, question will more and more. In natural conditions, there are significant forces that undermine the stability of population and change their gene pool. The main factor is the mutation process and genetic automatical processes. They include a gene flow, gene drift. What means gene flow? Populations are genetically open system. Migrations from other populations can overcome populations barriers and introduce new alleles into the population, which are passed on in the offspring. The chances of their consolidation are very high, since they have already been successfully tested in other populations. What means gene drift? It includes random fixation of individual allelic genes regardless of their adaptive value. Gene drift is typical for small populations with a small number of crosses. At the same time, heterozygosity decreases and homozygosity increases. As a result, one of the alleles may disappear. A population is an elementary unit of evolution. It is need, remember, it is very important thesis of all this lecture. Evolution proceeds due to gradual changes in the gene pool of the entire populations as a whole. The next important in this part of lecture, it is terms about microevolution and macroevolution. The synthetic theory of evolution made it possible to distinguish two levels of evolutionary process. Microevolution, it is a small square in middle of our picture about animals from round to give some line. Microevolution. And macroevolution, it is left side of picture when from primitive animals evolution leads to appearance animal, big animal, mammals and human as a result. For the first time these terms were proposed by the Russian genetics Filipchenko in 1927 years. Further contributions to the theory of micro and macroevolution were made by Четвериков, we listen today this name, Dobrzhinsky, Timofeev-Rissovsky and Huxley. This is very famous scientific which you need remember and can to describe what they make, what they give to this is evolution theory. We will speak and make report in our practice. Microevolution. It is evolution of population proceeding under the influence of natural selection and ending with specialities. And in this picture you can see owl, but this is owl look at first same, but at second very different. But it is one type. Microevolution is the evolution of populations proceeding under the influence of natural selection and ending with speciality. Microevolution covers a relatively short period of time. Its processes occur in the limited areas and includes phenomena occurring in populations. A population is a unit of evolution. The primary evolutionary phenomenon is a long-term and irreversible change in the genetic makeup of a population. Many microevolutionary phenomena can be tested experimentally. Speciation in the division in time or space of a previously single species into two or more species. In the course of speciation, there are three main stages: allocation of a new species form, formation of the species, steady state of the species. I see midline answer. Okay, good. What means geographic specification? This specification is based on the mechanism of geographic isolation of divergent populations. Here may be the case: A. Dissection of the range of the original species. B. A significant expansion of the specific habitat. The division of the area into isolated parts often occurs as a result of natural processes: forest fires, mountains falls, river floods, and so on. In this case, areas are formed completely or partially isolated from each other. Natural selection in them will act in different directions. As a result, the species splits intergeographic subspecies. An example is the emergence of several species of lily of valley from the ancient single original form of the forest lily of the valley in Europe. And in this picture, in next slide, you can to see how mountains or a river can to make differences between one species, which in result use many differences for food, for sun, for water, and leads to formation new differences to species. Expansion of the geographic range may be accompanied by the loss of links between populations located on the periphery and the population of the center. As a result, differences between populations of the same species will increase. An example of the emergence of a new species with the expansion of the geographic range are two species of gulls, herring gull and black-headed gull, inhabiting the coast of the Baltic and North Seas. They no longer interbreed with each other, but are connected by a chain of transitional subspecies capable of sexual process. Thus, the spawning period of trout in Lake Severn do not coincide, depending on the depth at which the fish are. Trout in the center of the lake, there the depth in the significant spawns in October. Trout at the mouth of a river flowing out of the lake, shallow water, spawns in spring and summer. The decisive factor that disrupts the crossing of fish is the unequal temperature regime associated with the rapidity of water warming in the different parts of the lake. So I said previously about today weather in our window outside, and give same example. When we speak about differences, little differences in condition, and can to lead to die one species, not give food for other species, and so change or foundation two type of species. Next, ecological speciation is less common in nature. It occurs within a single area and is associated with the fact that individual groups of individuals in the population occupy different ecological niches. At the same time, some form of biological isolation begins to act, violating crossing. Thus, the spawning period of trout in Lake Severn do not coincide, depending on the depth at which the fish are. So, in the center, in the lake, where the depth is significant, spawns in October. Through the mouth of a river flowing out the lake, spawns in spring and summer. The decisive factor that disrupts that crossing of fish is the unequal temperature regime associated with the rapidity of water warming in different parts of the lake. I see more activity in lecture. I see who present now in lecture. More it is mine group. Where other I not understand. And I repeat, during lecture I give 4 questions and need to answer of this question. Make this in table or letter and send me in VK from all person who was present in this lecture. And need to remember, in next lecture I will give little question again, and maybe I will give little report for you to understand how you listen, what you remember from this topic, from this lecture. Next, steady state of the species. The transition of a species to a stable state means stability. Before this time, anything have any question for me? Need anything to explain? Today my all questions without answer. Okay, macroevolution is called supraspecific evolution. The formation of larger systematic groups, genera, families, orders, and even classes. Micro and macroevolutionary processes cannot be ruptured. They are logically interconnected. The scale of macroevolution is quite significant. It is played out over vast territories and requires huge periods of time, tens and hundreds of millions of years. Forms of macroevolution. In the course of macroevolution, it is possible: first, a gradual change in a homogeneous group and its transformation into another group. Phyletic evolution. The second, division of a previously infinite group into 2 or more groups, or divergent evolution. Gradual change in a group at the macroevolutionary level consists of transformation of several closely related species and their unification into a larger taxa, genus, family, order, and other. And now I again want to remember you about all last our classes, practical classes. We many speak about helminths. Helminths before was primitive, protozoa. And all our topic and all our protocols begin from classification or systematic position. And in my group I said about, if we know about this systematic position, if we understand what means type, species, which character present in different class, in different types, so in future when we meet unknown for us organism, we can understand, because we will know kingdom, phylum, type, class, and all this character we will give to this species, and will understand how it works, how it give disease, how it can make transfer from one person to other, and many info we will understand only use systematic position. And today lecture show you what means this is systematic position, how its foundation, how we can use this as classification for organisms which we not know, because they have one way of development and can character from previously generation and transmit for general generations. And some function reduce, some function development. Again, if we will remember about our class and when we start speak about parasites, helminths, we said about what development, what new in helminths opposite is protozoa, and we speak about they have organs for moving, other type of organs for moving, reproductive system, digestive system, one or more cells in this organism. All this evolutionary theory can to understand. But more important, it is for you as for next doctors about evolution which happens with human. And in this part we speak about mutations, because mutations all times happens. And one type of this mutation can lead to excellent adaptation in environmental part, give disease, for example phenylketonuria or cancer, and give many problems for these organs. But all from you no example, one example about mutations which in one type it give disease, heart disease for all living of this person, but in second side this is mutation give protective against other disease. And if you now remember what I means, you can write what this mutation and about which two types of disease, when this is mutation give disease, in other make protective, I said. You can write if you understand what I meaning. What I try to explain. If you understand about which disease I said, you can write. But I am finish my lecture. I have you many tasks. I wait your answer. So our time is finished, and now you need give all your answer in my VK group. And I say Goodbye.